Hello, Fluffers, and welcome to Fluff It, a podcast for furries by furries. My name is Felix, and I am a wolf from the United States.
And my name is Uno, and I'm a raccoon from the United Kingdom.
And welcome back to Fluff It, and to our new viewers, welcome to Fluff It. Now, before we get started with today's episode, we have two announcements. Our first announcement is we have new viewers from Mexico, Brazil, and Italy. So to all of those people from those countries, welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in to Fluff It. 9 countries now, which is really crazy to think. But our second announcement is we have 4 interviews set up for Fluff It in the near future, and I am extremely excited. We are going to be joined by Finnecat, the Lion of the Sun, Kelly Wooden, and the man, the myth, the cockroach, chairman of Anthrocon, Uncle Kage himself.
So yeah, we're really excited to announce the upcoming interviews. That's going to be really exciting to hear from such amazing, talented people within the community. I'm really, really excited to get to speak to them. And hopefully everyone's going to enjoy hearing what they have to say too.
Yeah, no, I am super duper excited. I mean, it's crazy to think that Fluff It is getting an interview, but we're getting 4. So big thanks to Finnecat, Lion of the Sun, Uncle Kage, and Kelly for all taking time out of their day to come on to Fluff It. It means a ton to both of us, and it's really a great honor.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Like, just I can't even. I almost can't wrap my head around it. Like, thank you all so much for agreeing to come on and speak to us. It's going to be amazing to hear from everyone.
Now, today's episode, we want to talk about Fluff It's first furry convention, Megaplex.
So yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't make it to Megaplex this time just because I am in the UK. So it's very far for me, but I am hoping to get there in future. But of course, Felix was there talking to lots of people and experiencing the convention. So yeah, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about how it went.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
So obviously, I'm aware of Megaplex, but for any of the viewers who might not be too sure what it is, could you kind of tell us what exactly is Megaplex and where it's held and what typically happens there as well?
So Megaplex is a huge furry convention. It usually happens early August, and it happens in Orlando, Florida. It is currently being held at the Caribe Royale Hotel, which is not too far from Walt Disney World. Megaplex is pretty much a big furry con that is filled with many activities. You can do panels, you can go to the dealer's den, which is a giant art store, essentially. I mean, there are fursuit parades, a lot of interactions and events, and it's a really fun time. I would definitely recommend people go to Megaplex if they can.
Yeah, it really does sound like such an amazing experience. I'm so hoping I can go in the future. So kind of with the current situations in the world, and just it's been so long without conventions, and I'm sure everyone's been missing them so much. So what were your kind of initial reactions walking back into a con after such an incredibly long time?
Well, yeah, it's very weird, especially given that the plague that we're all living in at the moment, which has not been fun for anyone. I was very impressed with Megaplex, and I thought that Megaplex did a really good job, especially for being the first big furry convention to happen since the start of the lovely plague. I felt very safe. Everyone was following rules, wearing masks. Mostly everyone got their 2 shots that were there. And I was very excited. It was really cool for me to see Megaplex and experience it. In many ways, I had a blast. I mean, there wasn't anything with Megaplex that I didn't like. Obviously, the staff was a little short because of the current situations, but I want to stress that even with that, they did a very good, fantastic job with running the convention. I mean, it's not easy under these situations, but I thought they did a wonderful job.
That's great to hear. It's amazing now that conventions have just started again. I mean, I have not been to a con as big as Megaplex at all this year, but I've started going to smaller ones, and it's just great to be back. So obviously at such a big convention, fursuiting is a really big thing. I'm sure lots of fursuiters go there, and it sounds like a really amazing place to wear a fursuit. So as far as I know, this was your first time out in public with Felix, as in the fursuit version of Felix.
Yes.
So how did that feel?
So, I mean, it felt flufftastic, no pun intended. Well, sorry. But no, overall, I was very excited to wear Felix finally outside. That was the first time Felix was outside since I got him from you in 2019. I was super excited to finally wear Felix because, for our viewers, Uno made Felix for me in 2019, and I got Felix around Christmas of 2019, this right before the plague started. I was very disappointed when all the conventions were canceled in 2020. I was very bummed not being able to wear Felix out places at the Furry Convention. So when Megaplex was going on, this felt very awesome. I mean, I was a little nervous, not gonna lie, wearing Felix for the first time around other people that's not friends or family. But I felt very welcomed, and I had a lot of fun wearing Felix. I actually had a couple of interactions with other fursuiters as Felix.
That's great to hear. It's always good to go out for the first time in a suit. I made my first suit of Uno actually during the pandemic. He was like a lockdown project. So I recently went out with him like for the first time just a few days ago. So it's great to just finally be able to do that. And what would you say it's like to fursuit at a furry convention? Because that's something I've never done myself. So I'm really interested to know what that would be like.
Well, fursuiting at the Furry Convention is very much in many ways, it is a lot better than fursuiting alone because you do have a lot of other people dressing up and being in their fursuits. So you don't, if you're very self-conscious about yourself, you feel a lot better because there's so many other people in their fursuits. But it can be a little difficult just because for people who don't own fursuits, it's very hot in there, so you have to make sure that you're constantly hydrating and not making sure you're not getting too hot because there's been cases of heat exhaustion in the fursuits at FurryCons. Fortunately, I don't think any of that happened. And then your vision is also very limited because I was looking out of Felix's mouth and his eyes, and it was very tiny. It's kind of like making a circle from your hands and looking through that. That's basically all of the sight that you get to see. So I brought Grace, who is my mother, with me to the furry convention, and she was my fursuit handler, which are basically people who will follow the fursuiter and interpret for the fursuiter, because occasionally a lot of furries in suit do not speak while they act, and they can also help you go places without you running into someone or something. And that was very helpful, especially that I had to go through the parking lot with a lot of like uneven terrain before getting to the convention center. So big thanks to my mother. But no, it was a lot of fun fursuiting at the furry convention.
Yeah, so just to like add on to something that you mentioned there as well, you mentioned about how a lot of fursuiters don't speak. I'm actually curious now, like with Felix, do you speak or do you prefer to keep him as a silent character? Because I know for me, some of my characters do speak and some are more silent, but I usually do end up speaking if someone speaks to me.
So for me, I do not speak as Felix. Felix is a silent character, at least for right now. And that's kind of the space by of how I grew up. Because growing up, I went to Disney quite a bit, and I went to Georgia Tech football games, and all of the mascots at Disney and at these college football games never spoke, especially if they were in a fursuit. And I kind of act somewhat similar to Buzz, who is the Georgia Tech mascot. He's very clumsy, very quirky, very like energetic and friendly, and that's kind of the energy that I put with Felix. And I kind of add more curiosity into Felix's personality. So There's like I took some people took a few photos of me kind of like just like checking things out, like a tree or like a window. I mean, Felix is a very curious wolf.
That I could totally imagine that for Felix, like that works so well. So speaking of fursuits as well, obviously there will have been a lot of other fursuiters at Megaplex. So what was your favorite fursuit that you saw whilst there?
That is very difficult. So I'm gonna kind of divide it. I think the best performer that I saw in fursuit was Jiru. He was a black, yellow, and green wolf or fox. I think he's a wolf. But he was very energetic. I mean, this guy was very passionate. It was just amazing to see Jiru, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. But very spunky, and I loved it. In terms of the fursuits that I saw, it's kind of a tie between two fursuits. I think the most creative design I saw was in terms of species was Dragonroo, who was a dragon kangaroo hybrid. That was really cool. And then my favorite fursuit was Brain Freeze Pop, who is a furry YouTuber, and he's kind of like this purple, blue, pink dog, and he was just so adorable, especially at his panel, "Are You Smarter Than a Puppy?" Just seeing him interact in the suit, it was just really awesome.
That's amazing to hear. Like it must be great seeing so many different fursuiters. Like I've only been to fur meets, which are always an amazing experience, but I'd love to really go to a convention and just see everyone. um, so here's another question. On Instagram, we saw that someone followed you in suit. So who were they and why were they helping?
So, like I mentioned earlier, that was my mother, and she was there, this making sure that I was not getting too hot,
Yeah.
and that I was again going through walking fine without accidentally tripping on something, because that's always one of my biggest fears in fursuit is either getting too hot and not being really able to help myself get somewhere safe, or accidentally
Mm.
tripping on something that I could have easily avoided otherwise. At Furry Week in Atlanta in 2019, someone in fursuit accidentally tripped on the escalator, and it prompted a ER emergency. So
Mm.
I saw a little bit of that, and I guess that kind of still is fresh in my head because I don't
Yeah.
want that to happen to me, and hopefully that person is fine and is doing well. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, especially for my first furry convention with Felix, I wanted to suit with this someone there just in case if something happened.
Yeah, it's always good to have a handler or just someone with you to help. I think that's very important, especially at a convention where it can get very hot very quickly. So that's
Especially
really
in
good to hear.
Florida. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, but and as much as I love my mother, I mean, the fact that she went to the furry convention, and I mean, she had a blast. I mean, she did her own panels. She spoke with mini furries. I mean, it was just really cool to see her. I mean, eventually over time, I do want to just suit in Felix without having to worry about having a handler, but like many things, it takes time and you just gotta practice.
Yeah.
So it's just me, like, I don't want to push it. I don't want to get because I know that if I try doing something too ambitious, it's probably gonna backfire.
Yeah. So moving on to kind of another area of the convention, I've seen that furry conventions, especially in America, have panels, and I know that we have them at Comic Cons here in the UK, but I don't think they're as big as a thing over here as they are at conventions like Megaplex. So I'm quite interested to know a little bit more about them. So what were the panels overall like?
So there were a ton of panels and meetups. I mean, there are a ton, and not every furry does the panels. I mean, you can definitely go to somewhere like Megaplex, Anthrocon, and this fursuit around and socialize. So, I mean, it's completely okay not to do any of these. But panels, I feel, are super fun to attend. They cover a various amount of topics. There are some that are this people talking story wise. There's people or there's panels where it's activities and games. There's some that are more educational that are helping with writing or drawing. I mean, there's a ton of panels out there that I thought were really fun. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool that they kind of cover so many topics. My only kind of real experience of panels was at a horror convention, which were obviously really cool, but like kind of really specialized. So it's kind of good that furry conventions seem to just cover such a wide variety of topics and activities and all kinds of stuff. I think that's fascinating. And what was your favorite panel?
That is very hard. Again, I'm gonna categorize. So I think my favorite educational or like an instructive type panel was probably Uncle Kage talking about anthropomorphic anatomy, because after walking out of that panel, I'm like looking at some of my animal characters. I'm like, I need to probably redesign some of these, because we were Uncle Kage talked about basically how animals and anatomy works, and some of the unrealistic parts to it. It's like, for example, having a deer character but trying to put like a t-shirt on them, like it's gonna get stuck in the antlers, or putting something tight like tight jeans on a husky. That won't work. They have very puffy hair. And then other things. It was a really funny panel. Everyone had a good laugh. Still need to redesign some of my characters, but I mean, I had a blast with that. My favorite performance was probably again Uncle Kage, and it's between the auction and Uncle Kage's story hour. And I would definitely recommend, if Uncle Kage is at the Furry Convention, attend his story hour. It is one of the funniest things at the Furry Convention, and it's just a lot of fun. Hearing Kage's stories, especially as a creative writer, it's really cool how he uses real life experiences and turns them into like these wonderful, like hilarious stories. Because he was talking about his doctor this story hour, and some of his medical stories, and it was absolutely funny. At the end of around the end of the story hour, he was bringing up a experience at BronyCon, and someone in the crowd kind of like booed or had kind of like this like cringe noise reaction at the bronies, and Uncle Kage stopped, and he's like, what did I don't know how Kage exactly said it, but he basically egged them on to do it again. And and he
Yeah.
had the best reaction. I mean, it's like, well, I don't want to try and quote Kage directly, because I know I would butcher that. But Kage essentially shut him down very quickly, because like like furries, bronies are have this like huge diverse community, and Uncle Kage basically said to him, we as furries should be the last people picking on them. So I mean, everyone was like cheering and clapping to that, and I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with that. I mean, but that was a really fun panel. And then my favorite activity was Are You Smarter Than a Puppy, which was done by Brain Freeze Pup. And essentially it was people would be given random tasks that they had no idea what they were, and the only way they would figure out how to do the task or how they would complete it was by people clapping. And there was no vocals, there was no tips. So like, for example, for me, I was tasked with, I had to find the balloon in the room, put it on my nose and bump it up like a seal. I had no idea. And everyone was like clapping, then stopped suddenly. And then it was really fun. My favorite of the tasks was this poor fursuiter had the unfortunate task of standing still for 15 seconds. So they would like stand still, people started clapping, and then when they did something,
Yeah.
they stopped, and the poor fursuiter got so confused they actually got a little frustrated, understandably, but it was so adorable. And I think the craziest panel I was at was the bingo, the plush bingo. That that started a little bit later, because when you advertise free plushes at a fairy convention, everyone and their grandmother will be there, and everyone everyone came to that. But it was a really awesome environment because there were mystery boxes that you could take if you won bingo, and people were just like starting to like chant, "Open it, open it, open it." And when the person opened the plush mystery box and like revealed the plush they had, people like started like cheering like it was like the birth of a new king or queen, or has been achieved. It was funny. There's a lamb, or no, not a lamb. There was a goat fursuiter that opened the mystery box, and it was another goat. It was a plush goat, and everyone just started like hollering. I mean, it was probably the most chaotic bingo game I've ever been in, but it was the most wholesome. I mean, everyone was friendly, and that's a very
Yeah.
pleasant change, because most bingo games I've been at, outside of the furry fandom, people get really salty, and become quite snappy, because they're not getting bingo.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone was having a fun time. I was doing that with Dragon Roo, and I mean, we were both having a good laugh.
Yeah, that just sounds like so much fun. I wish, especially the plush bingo, I wish I could have seen that. It just sounds
Could have
hilarious.
taken a couple of more photos of that.
Yeah. So, kind of in reflection after coming back from the con, what does the kind of what does the furry community mean to you, kind of as a whole, whilst at furry cons? Because I know sometimes the community at conventions can be very different to the community online, and I think especially after not going to a convention for so long, it's kind of interesting to see how you can view the fandom a little bit differently after being at a real event. Instead of just kind of witnessing it online, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting hearing, because Uncle Kage brought this up at Megaplex, or he talked about this a little bit, because the big question around Megaplex for mini furries was, how would the furry fandom rebound from the plague, with conventions being down for nearly 2 years. And I honestly felt like the furry fandom was just as strong, if not stronger, than it was before, um, going into Megaplex. I mean, people were extremely energetic. People were extremely happy to be back. We need to remember those we lost during the plague, but I definitely think that the furry fandom is has only become stronger going through all of these difficult times and months. And I think that Megaplex, if there's one thing to take away from it, is that the furry fandom is still there and is still the same furry fandom it once, or it was. And people were very accepting. I asked a couple of furries around at Megaplex how they felt about the furry fandom and what it meant to them. And a common answer between mostly everyone was that it's a place where you feel accepted, that people won't judge you, and that everyone is extremely friendly and wholesome. I mean, at Kage Story Hour, someone accidentally did not drink enough water, and they fainted. And the first thing Uncle Kage did and everyone did was try to figure out how can we help this person. And the staff were very quick to get them feeling better. And just the concern of everyone in the room was this really neat to notice, is everyone cares about each other at the furry conventions. And it's and I don't want to, because I think that's the very special thing. And Astro said something very similar while we were speaking, is that the furry fandom is very kind and very tolerant to other people. Um, we you see a lot of people talking to each other, and it's a little crazy for me even still to say I spoke to Alkali, I spoke to Uncle Kage, and I had these very nice conversations because you hear from all over different fandoms of how at those conventions people are very reclusive and not wanting to speak to one another. And it's just really great to see the furry fandom kind of be this one big happy family.
Yeah, I definitely think as well, like in the current times, it's just really good to get back to that. And I think, like what you said, it's important to kind of remember like everything that's happened over the last year in terms of like who we've lost and how it's affected people. But I also think it's equally as important to kind of move on and well, not so much move on, but just like remember the good times and remember the fun things and the kind of happy things that people enjoy, which I think definitely the furry fandom and furry cons are like a big one for that. Um, so, you know, I think everyone deserves to just have fun now and just look out for each other and be kind to each other. And that's really what everyone needs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was really
So yeah.
yeah, yeah, I was really impressed because I mean, people were following the rules, especially around safety protocols, extremely well. And I don't want to dive into world affairs or anything, but it felt very refreshing to see people follow instructions. So that's where I'm. It's just really cool to see people caring for each other, which I wish was more common.
Yeah. So in kind of a similar question in a way, what was the kind of culture like at the furry convention?
It was
If there's
very
sort of anything you can say towards that.
Yeah, very similar to the last question. I mean, people were very
Mm,
kind, very open and abrasive. I mean, you could easily strike up a conversation with anyone. I mean, I was in the dealer's den and then I ran into Akalai at a booth and we ended up speaking to another for 10 something minutes. And it was just amazing to finally talk to the guest of honor, Akalai. Really friendly guy. He has a podcast. I would definitely check him out. But it was, I mean, people are very open and everyone is very optimistic. I mean, people are looking forward to the future. People are, I mean, the culture is very friendly. It's very optimistic. It's very creative. I mean, and it's very refreshing to be around a lot of people that are very much wanting to be happy and creative. Because the last year has been very tough for everyone, and it's occasionally been very hard for me to stay in a bright, happy mood. So this felt very good to be in a place where this felt happy overall. There was like,
yeah.
of course, we had to follow protocols and be safe, or be as safe as we can with doing everything we can in our power to not make other people sick. But this was great to see people happy again.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's one of the best things about conventions and events starting up again is that it's just really good to see that people are just enjoying themselves. It's because it's just been like what you said. It's been so long, and it's just hard to stay positive through something like that. So it's just nice that people can actually enjoy things again. I think that really is one of the best things about it. And kind of moving on to, I want to say pretty much the last question for now. Um, Obviously, when you go to a convention, it is only a few days and it can really fly by really fast. So, kind of what would you wish you did a bit differently at Megaplex if you could go back and do it all again, if there is anything?
Unfortunately, it's not very realistic, especially given with all of these with the current events and the play going on right now. But I honestly wish you were there at Megaplex because while it was great to share Fluff It to the furry community, it kind of didn't feel quite the same without you. And I felt honestly, I felt like that only half of Fluffit was there. So I really, I mean, I felt really bad that you weren't there, and I was like, what can I do to make it up to you? Because I was like, I mean, I just feel horrible in some ways that you weren't able to show up. So that would be the one thing I would definitely want to do differently in future fairy conventions, is to figure out how both of us are at the same con and representing Fluffit at its fullest. Because you're as much as Fluffit as I am. So it was just very weird to be advertising Fluffit, sharing Fluffit without you.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like there's nothing to feel bad for. Like it was just, I mean, it was after everything that's happened. There's no way I could have traveled over there this year. But honestly, I definitely want to go in future. So I'm sure it's not going to be that difficult to have both of us there in future.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I'm thinking
Yeah,
about
no, it's gonna. I
already.
mean, I'm
That'll
excited.
be
It's gonna
amazing.
happen eventually, and I'm hoping that one day we can do a panel on Fluffit.
Yeah, me too.
That'd be awesome. But yeah, I mean, I'm very much looking forward to the future conventions.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully, a first furry convention for me at sometime in the not too far future.
Yes.
Hopefully.
But I think that is all of the questions you were asking. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much all. I mean, I think that's covered a lot of the kind of experience of Megaplex. Hopefully, that was very interesting for me to hear about, because it is something I'd love to experience in future, and hopefully. That might have convinced some of the listeners to check out a furry con if they haven't, or check out Megaplex if they can
Yeah.
get to
Oh,
it
yeah. No, I
sometime in
definitely.
future.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I definitely recommend do a furry convention if you are a furry. It is one of the best experiences you can have in a life. I mean, it's just fantastic. And anyone who is listening that was at Megaplex, feel free to in the comments share what your experiences were at Megaplex. We would love to hear what you felt about the convention and what you enjoyed from it. But thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in to listen to us talk about Megaplex. It is always a honor to be doing these episodes with you, Uno, and we are looking forward to these upcoming interviews coming in the near future. Stay tuned, everyone, for the upcoming ones. We're super excited.
Yeah, we're just incredibly excited for the interviews. I almost can't get my head around it. I'm so excited to hear from them. And I hope that everyone listening is excited to hear from them too. And yeah, hopefully this was interesting.
Yes.
Thank you all for listening again.
Thank you so much, and make sure to like, subscribe, and share to friends. We are super excited, and if you want to follow and keep up with our updates and announcements, you can find us on Fluffit Podcast on Instagram, and you can always ask us questions on Fluffit Podcast on Instagram or fluffitpodcast@gmail.com, and we would be more than happy to answer any questions. But until the next episode, stay fluffy and take care.
See you all next time. Goodbye.